Okay, we'll start with round 3, but we've already done the first round, 6 single crochets into the magic ring, not miracle ring, Tina, magic ring. Working in a continuous spiral to the second round, 2 in each one, and then we have 12 stitches, and we'll join this one so that our snowflake doesn't look all wonky. So I've got my first stitch marked, and we'll just do a slip stitch right into there and pull that sucker through. I'm gonna get rid of that stitch marker because I don't think we'll need it. So the pattern says chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, slip stitch into the second chain from the hook. So there's 1 and here's 2, and we'll just slip stitch here, and then we'll chain 3, 1, 2, 3, slip stitch into that third chain, 1, 2, and then here's 3. Get in there. Got it. Into the third, and then chain 2, and then we'll slip stitch into the second chain, so 1, 2 into there, and then we're going to slip stitch into this first slip stitch place we did. So if we look back at our pattern, it says slip stitch into the second chain from the hook, and so that would have been our third. So we'll go back into here, and then we'll slip stitch, go all the way through, and then we'll slip stitch in these last 2, and then we'll stop and we'll look at what we've done so that we can see what we're making here. 1, and then 2. So I'm going to leave that loop. So basically what we've done is we've made like a little, almost like a little fist here with a thumb and a pinky and a... So we've got 3 little pokey parts coming out. And then we're going to slip stitch into the base of this first, where we started from. And then we slip stitch into this next one. And then we'll chain 2. And then we'll slip stitch into that second chain. And then we'll slip stitch down here at the beginning where we first slip stitched. And then from here we just repeat around 5 more times, so you'll have 6 total little arms coming off. So we'll start again with the chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're going to slip stitch into here. That's the second chain. And then we'll chain 3. And we'll slip stitch into that third one from the hook. And then 2. Slip stitch here. And then we'll pull it all back together by slipping into the same place we first slip stitched into. We've got our 3 little knobbies there, and then we slip stitch into these 2 chains that came up to start the arm. Jesus. There we go. And then into this one. And then we slip stitch into the base where we started. Then we go to the next stitch and slip stitch. Then we chain 2. We slip stitch back in the second chain from the hook. And then we'll slip stitch back into where we started on that little chain 2. And then we go into the next stitch to start the 3rd pokey arm. So 4 again. Slip stitch into the second chain. Chain 3. Slip stitch into the 3rd. Chain 2. Slip stitch into the 2nd. And then slip stitch back into this guy here. And then slip down this last 2, 1 and 2, and then back into the base. We'll slip stitch and then slip stitch into the next stitch, chain 2, slip into the second chain, and then back into the base, and then over to the next one to start the 4th repeat of 6. See how we're doing here? We've got 3 little knobbies and 3 big parts of the snowflake. 1, 2, 3, 4, into the second, and then 3, and then into the 3rd, and then 2, and into the 2nd, and then slip back into this area here, and then slip stitch here, and 1 more, and then slip stitch back into that base, and then we'll go to the next stitch, and then we'll chain 2, and into the second chain, and then back into that base. Uh-oh. And now we have 4. And we'll chain 4 again. And slip into the second. Chain 3. And then slip into that 3rd. There it is. And then chain 2, slip into the second, and then we'll slip back into this here where we first slipped, and then we've got 2 slip stitches on the way down, and then slip stitch back into the base, and then slip stitch into the next stitch, and then from here we'll chain 2, slip into the second stitch, and then slip back into that beginning, and then we'll slip over to this next stitch. Where are we going here? Here. Chain 4. Into the second, chain from the hook, we'll slip stitch, and then chain 3, and slip into that third one from the hook, and then chain 2, and we'll slip stitch into this one here, the second one, and then we have to slip stitch back into here to close that up, and then slip stitch into this one as we go down, and then that first one as we go down, and then we go back into the beginning and slip stitch, and then we slip stitch the next stitch, chain 2, slip stitch into that second, and back into the base of that first, or that stitch, and then slip stitch one more time over, and this is our last spiky guy. We'll chain 4, slip stitch into that second one, chain 3, into that third one, we'll slip stitch, and then we'll chain 2, slip stitch into the second, and we'll slip stitch back to close that up here, and then slip stitch 2 on the way back down to the base, and then slip stitch back into the beginning of that arm, slip stitch over one more time, and this is our last little nub, and we'll chain 2, slip stitch into the second chain from the hook, and slip stitch back into there, at the base, and then we need to slip stitch to finish off, and that's into the bottom of the first. So you'll slip stitch there, and we will cut the yarn and pull that through to finish off. Just pull that tight, and you'll weave that end in, and then you can turn it over and pull the magic ring tight, or miracle ring. Haha. Pull that tight, and you can weave this end in too. But for now, we'll just hide those behind here, and we can see our yellow snowflake. Don't eat yellow snow. But that's what it'll look like when it's done. I hope this helps.